Welcome to the Travel with Meaning podcast, the show that talks with artists, entertainers, entrepreneurs, chefs, CEOs, athletes, and travel industry experts to hear the travel stories that have impacted their lives and careers. We visit destinations to talk with the locals and bring the Travel with Meaning community with us to share our experiences with all of you. I'm your host, Mike Scheibel. Join us on this epic adventure. Sam Goodwin, thank you so much for joining us on the Travel with Meaning podcast. It's great to have you and good to finally connect.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, it's been a few years coming, so happy to be here.
Author, traveler, all the good things. And we have so much to really get into with you. So Sam is one of these elite travelers who's visited all 193 countries. Something did happen to him, though, at country 181. I'm not going to give it away right now. Also, author of a new book called Saving Sam, which I highly recommend. Tells that whole story that we're going to get into. And for those of you watching on video, you can see he's holding up Saving Sam. I'm going to say that I listened to the Audible of the book, which I loved because it had your family and you also sharing the two sides. We're going to get into that story. But I want to go backwards before we go forwards, right? You grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep, that's right. So, and I'm actually here today for a couple of days. I'm visiting my parents, but grew up in St. Louis. Most of my upbringing was around playing ice hockey, which my brothers and I all played, and I'm the oldest of five. I have two younger brothers, two younger sisters, and grew up right here in the Midwest.
It's amazing. And again, we're going to kind of keep referencing because family, that strong family is going to keep coming back into the story. But growing up, playing hockey, do you have memories of road trips or first big trip that you can remember as a family?
Yep. So my first really understanding of travel was crisscrossing the United States, a little bit in Canada, playing hockey. And so that was what, that was my introduction to travel in our van with my siblings, with my parents. My parents did take us to Europe once or twice when we were younger, so tasted a little bit of going overseas. But truly, a lot of it was just kind of around the United States.
I think that's some of those remarkable moments is that we can remember just those early years, especially with family. And I love that you don't even have a big memory of what those Europe trips were, but you know that you guys went.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate for those, and certainly planted a little bit of a seed for sure.
Of course. And so let's tee this up. So. Again, reference that you're one of these elite travelers who visited all 193 countries, though we're going to talk more about Sam, the author, in a moment. But I think, and I remember the big move for you really in the international living working space is when you moved to Singapore in 2012.
Yeah, that's right. So I finished undergrad in 2012 and had the opportunity to move to Singapore to work for a tech startup business and an NGO that was doing development work around Southeast Asia. And frankly, when I first had that opportunity, I thought it was crazy. I would never move to Asia. That's crazy. I originally only planned to be there for about 3 months, but I ended up staying for 6 years, and it was a fantastic opportunity, a great experience, a great way to begin my professional career. And during that time, I just traveled as much as I could. I was in my early 20s in the heart of Southeast Asia. I had the world's best airport in my backyard. And I took advantage of the opportunity to explore as much of the region and beyond as possible. And just a personal preference when I traveled, I didn't like to repeat places. So even if I went somewhere and had a fantastic experience, the next weekend, the next holiday, the next opportunity I would just go somewhere different. And I put that formula into play for about 6 years. And in early 2018, I realized that I had traveled to about 120 countries in the world. And I remember at that point thinking well, how many are there? I always traveled because it was fun and I enjoyed it. But most importantly, I learned from it. Travel was the best education I'd ever had. It was never about ticking boxes or checking places off a list, but I did a little bit of research and learned that there are 193 fully recognized UN sovereign states. And at that point, I thought, well, maybe I could go to all of them. And the competitive athlete in me, setting goals and working toward achieving them.
And so that's what happened. So 2018, you're kind of like, all right, well, this is going to be my new kind of mission? Did you give yourself a time frame? Like, let me just crank this out, or what were your thoughts in that moment?
You know what? I had about whatever it is, 70 countries to go, and I will admit my style of travel changed when I decided to try and travel to the rest of them, and that was because the objective had temporarily changed, and I don't really recommend that style of travel that I experienced in that sort of last leg of the journey. I was moving maybe a little bit faster than I normally would have. But again, the goal had changed, and then the objective had changed with it, and super grateful for those experiences, and I frankly just did the best I could with what I had. I didn't have like unlimited time or money or resources or contacts in different places, so I did the best I could, and my style of travel did change just a little bit, though.
Just for reference for listeners and people who aren't familiar with travelers who visited every country in the world, all not 193 that are recognized. Is there a time limit that you have to do it in? Is it anything that's kind of within these rules?
I'll tell you. So the extreme travel community, or this group of people who are involved in this, they were so incredibly helpful to me. I truly would not have been able to do it. One of the best things that I always tried to do was to follow the path of another traveler, to get their advice, to get their insight. And so they helped me a lot. At the same time, this is a topic that can get fiercely debated within this community. And I think travel means something different to everybody. I don't think it's right to tell someone what's right or wrong or best or worst. And I think that's the beauty of it. So for me, I didn't count airports. I didn't count just stepping over the border and then stepping back. Again, it was all about experiences and learning. So that to me kind of violated the whole spirit of the journey. At the same time, there were places where I didn't spend very much time, and there were different reasons for that. It wasn't because like I didn't want to be there longer. It was just, again, I did the best I could. I didn't have like unlimited time or money or anything. So I just did the best I could. There were some places where I spent just a couple days, and there were other countries. I mean, like Singapore, I lived there for 6 years, and everywhere in between. So that was kind of how I did it. And travel means something different to everybody, which I think is the beauty of it.
Dude, you're kind of already stealing our thunder for coming up later when we're going to ask you what travel means. I mean, I don't know. I guess, are we done already? Yeah. One thing I'll say about Sam is you have an incredible video on your Instagram, and I'm probably on some of your other social channels, when you say, name a country, I'll tell you a story. I think that's the reference. And you have flags of every 193 country that you visited, and you go through and you pick up and you tell a little story about each one.
Yeah, it was a fun video to make, and just kind of a snapshot of the journey, and a great perspective that's come from that.
So I thought it'd be fun. I'm just going to throw a couple random countries out there and just to see what you come up with, because I didn't know how scripted that was. I was like, let's put the guy on the spot.
Oh boy, here we go.
What about Fiji?
Fiji, kind of the hub of the South Pacific, but I really enjoyed going to, I mean, in and around Nadi, but just incredible beaches there, and really like a great hub for the South Pacific if you're planning to travel in that region. Momi Bay. Momi Bay is the place. It's south of Nadi. That's absolutely gorgeous.
All right. Kyrgyzstan? I'm probably saying it incorrectly.
Kyrgyzstan, yeah. Bishkek, Ala Archa National Park is absolutely beautiful. I think a lot of Central Asia is kind of overlooked. It's really a remarkable region with incredible hospitality, and again, not like on the radar of a lot of travelers, in my experience.
All right, one more. Austria.
Oh gosh, lots of friends in Austria. I went skiing at a place called Semmering, which is kind of a city mountain, not too far out into the Alps, but very accessible from Vienna, with a hockey teammate of mine who is Austrian, and it's beautiful.
I think the hockey thing is an interesting reference, and I want to just bring that up because you do talk about in the book Saving Sam, which again highly recommend, and I'm just going to be a fan of this Audible version. You talk about even living in Singapore. You had an injury that was a concussion, a head injury that really didn't allow you to continue to pursue this career in hockey, but you got a chance to play non-contact hockey in Singapore. So it's that connection of people, expats, that keeps coming back around for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The game has continued to provide experiences to me in a way that I never could have expected, and I had pretty significant concussion injuries that ended my formal playing career. But then beyond that, it opened up a lot of doors, including playing in Asia. It was potentially my best way of meeting people there. I coached hockey in some non-traditional markets like Singapore and the Philippines and Hong Kong, and even had the opportunity to coach in North Korea, and so these it's for me, it was always special to use hockey, to use a sport as the way to build a cultural bridge, to connect with people. And
Mm.
there are lots of ways to connect with people, but being able to use the game of hockey to do that were always special moments for me, and continue to have those opportunities.
Let's go back to North Korea for a moment, because I think it's one of those countries that, when I know that I reference speaking to someone who's visited every country, they always say, well, how did you get to North Korea? And how was that experience?
It was March of 2016. I was living in Singapore, and I was invited there by a Canadian man who was putting on this sports diplomacy exhibition, kind of this cultural exchange. And I went and coached their national hockey team. I spent a week in Pyongyang, and also went around the other parts of the country, and I had a fantastic experience. We were treated like royalty. It was incredible. I'm not oblivious to the fact that I saw what they wanted me to see, and getting off that tourist track, so to speak, things can look, and likely do look, very different.
Hmm.
But my experience was very positive. Obviously, Korean culture, history, food is fantastic, and we were treated very well, and had a positive experience there. And the players were actually relatively skilled. They listened, they worked hard, they wanted to get better, and again, it was very memorable to use hockey as a way to build this bridge with these people who, um, y- all things considered, we've had relatively different lives. So being able to bond over a common activity was fantastic.
I love that the Midwest kid from St. Louis is bonding with people around the world through hockey, right? I'm sure you never thought about that growing up.
No, I never expected to play hockey in North Korea or live in Asia or anything like that. And I've had a lot of help along the way, a lot of support from good people, but just really grateful for the journey.
You talk about people, and I like to reference a lot this quote from The Wizard of Oz: "It's not where you go, but who you meet along the way." Um, and you talk about travelers, and I think they used to call it like the hippie road. You can find out from people where else to go, who to talk to, who's your fixer. And one of the people you actually connected with is a key part of your book, and the story that we're getting to is Joss Stone, the international singer. Tell us how that even came to be in your initial connection, and are you guys even still connected?
Yep. So actually, this goes back to something in our previous conversation about Fiji. We actually connected in Fiji at the airport, and I recognized her because she, in addition to her very successful music career, also traveled to every country and played a gig in every country. And so I had recognized her from sort of like the traveler grapevine, and just struck up a conversation at the airport. And Joss is an incredibly warm and positive person. She was very helpful to me. We spent several hours in that airport talking. I'm not even sure we really referenced her music career at all, aside from just her playing gigs in every country as part of her travel journey. And so it happened very serendipitously. I'm still in touch with her today. She has her own incredible travel experiences, and is just a really a very good and incredible person.
There's a lot of central themes I think keep coming up with you. Routine is a big one, and I brought up Joss for a couple of reasons. One is, A, I'm a fan. B, I love her story about playing gigs everywhere, and that passion of connecting people through music. And then your serendipitous kind of just meeting in Fiji. Um, when she was also, I believe, that strategic person that also introduced you to your connection in Syria.
Hmm. Yeah. So this was in May of 2019, and Joss had actually been to Syria in February, so just
Okay.
a couple months earlier, and she connected me with her fixer who had taken her to Syria again as part of her journey to travel to every country. So that was how that began.
Got it. I want to get into this was one part, and I know I had to keep referencing country 181 in Syria, and obviously there's something here. I don't want to give away too much because I want people to read the book. So I want you to kind of share um, in your words what happened to you from that standpoint, and why was your stay in Syria longer than you had expected?
Yep. So on as you mentioned, this was country 181 of 193. On May 25th, I went to Syria, and just 2 hours after arriving, I was walking through a roundabout when all of a sudden a black pickup truck abruptly pulled up next to me. Two armed men jumped out of the back seat and instructed me to get inside. And thankfully they weren't violent, but I didn't have a choice. And I was scared, confused. I had no information. I didn't want to help. I was desperately trying to understand what was happening. And these men were loyal to who I just mentioned, the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, and told me that they were skeptical about my travel history and my travel motives. And as we sped down back alleys of the city, the officers accused me of espionage, of being an American spy, of collaborating with terrorists. And nothing like this in 180 countries had ever happened to me before. And I can go into all the details, but I was held in Syria for longer than I was expecting. As you referenced, I was held. They held me for 63 days, for 2 months, and thank God, thanks to a long list of people who worked tirelessly, the situation ended peacefully, and I was released on July 26th, 2019. And a lot of this story is, as you referenced, what the book recaps, and everything that I went through and what my family experienced. But that was kind of in a nutshell what happened. And today, just couldn't be more grateful that things ended peacefully. And through that, I realized that I learned quite a bit about resiliency, about the power of the human spirit, about faith. And so now I try to focus on, although it was a very challenging time, I try to focus on the positives that have come from it, because there are so many positives. So anyways, happy to go back and fill in some of those details, but that's that in a nutshell what happened and what the book's about.
Yeah, and I wanted to hear that in your words. We're going to unpack this quite a bit because this is just an extraordinary story on a lot of levels. One, what happened to you? Had you ever felt unsafe in 180 other countries? Had you ever had something that was like, the little hairs in the back of your neck stand up?
Yeah, interestingly, there were places where I've been where I felt more uncomfortable than where I was in Syria that day. One was in Kabul. This was 2018, pre-Taliban takeover, but just there's a lot of unpredictable acts of violence,
Sure.
and felt relatively uncomfortable there. However, the place in the world where just personally I felt the most uncomfortable anywhere was in Mogadishu in Somalia, and still had a great experience, and the local people are incredibly warm and positive. But Somalia is the only country in the world that doesn't have a central form of government. So there are quite a few opportunities for improved stability there. I remember there were military officers who were patrolling the streets of Mogadishu with bazookas. So I felt pretty uncomfortable. That was the place where I felt the most instability during my visit, much more so than where I was in Syria.
Yeah, and I wanted to reference that because you share in the book. Again, I'm going to keep saying the book, Saving Sam, for a number of reasons. You're going to hear the juxt of what happened. You kind of get now that he spends a little more time than he thought he was going to be in Syria. But the book paints this story. All right, so you started to say that you felt comfortable, and I think you even were on the phone with your mom when this moment happened, of these guys apprehend you or take you into custody, whatever reference we're going to have with there. They grab you, they kidnap you, and they take you. And I think it was like, I'm on the phone with my mom as a reference, and just to kind of say, hey, I'm not doing anything harmful. I'm talking to my mom, right? Leave me alone. there's so much here that I'm just kind of wanting to put together. I'm going to keep referencing again, people check out the book for a number of reasons. And I'm going to say again, why I like the audio is you have your family's story and what we know you get out of Syria. Spoiler alert. I can tell you what happens at the end of Titanic. I can tell you that Sam is saved. But the thing I want you to understand with this and why I keep referencing the book is it's not the ways that you might think. It's not the US government. It's not some secret operative CIA thing. It's your family through a lot of back channels that had a lot to do with this through connections, through relationships. Again, I'm going to kind of jump around, so I don't want to give too much away because I really want people to check this out because I was so moved by the story. What I want to talk to is you, is this American traveler who's now like, where did the moment hit you that you were like, I'm literally now captive. Nobody knows where I am. What the hell's going on? Like, where were you feeling? Where were you? What was going on?
Yeah, I was shocked and in disbelief about what had happened. In just a few short hours, my life had spiraled out of control in the most terrifying of ways. I felt exactly the way they wanted me to. Hopeless, utterly cut off from any control of my life. Potentially, the most challenging part of the situation was the uncertainty. I had no information about what might happen, and I spent the first 27 days in solitary confinement. And sometimes I say to people, and I'll say to you, Mike, if I told you that you were going to go and you were going to be put in a dungeon, in a prison cell, you were going to be given bread and boiled potatoes and water, you were going to hear people around you being tortured, but you're not going to be physically harmed. And on day 27, you're going to be taken out. Now, I'm not saying that you'd be comfortable, but what I am saying is that you would be in a totally different situation knowing that finish line, knowing that on day 27, you're out. And that's what I didn't have. And based on the information that I had, I believed that all of these different potential outcomes were possible. I didn't even have any information that could eliminate one of them from the table. For example, were they going to, was I going to be released in 5 minutes? Well, I mean, based on the information I had, I thought that was possible. Was I going to be in that cell forever? I thought that was possible. Was I going to be released in a week? Were they going to shoot me or torture me or stop feeding me? Based on the information I had, I believed all of these were possible, and trying to entertain all of these potential outcomes 24/7 was emotionally and psychologically exhausting.
I know there's one part in the book where you talk about, again, we come back to routine, finding ways to mark down time for yourself, staying fit, and then controlling what you can control. Those first 27 days could not have been that much of a structure for yourself. There had to be a lot of kind of ebbs and flows of emotions. Where did you kind of try and regather yourself to go after some of those elements of staying fit, routine, time, and controlling what you can?
Certainly a lot of ebbs and flows of emotions, as you mentioned. I think the routine was kind of this natural instinct from being a competitive athlete, as we kind of referenced earlier.
You have no idea what time it is, too, during the days or what's going on or showering or food or anything.
Right. It was hard to keep track of time. I had a couple ways where I tried to do that, but it was challenging to keep track. So I really fought to establish this routine, and there were a range of things that I did to pass time. They became part of my routine. I would pretend the cell was full of people and tell stories. I would dream up these crazy ways that I might get released. I would remember hockey games that I played in from start to finish, everything I could remember, and immerse myself back in those games. I took time to pray. I took time to eat. I took time to exercise. I did push-ups, sit-ups, core exercises, and establishing this routine became crucial. And I think there's a lot of parallels there between all of us today in our routine, in our daily lives, how much more productive we can be when we have a routine. And One quick thing that I'll mention, and I don't talk about this that much, but when I about 6 months after I came home, I was invited to North Carolina to speak to the United States SEER team, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape is what it stands for, and essentially what these are military officers in our military who are often put on missions where they're at risk of being captured, and they essentially wanted to know what I had done in captivity, in solitary confinement, without any formal training. And it turns out that several of the things that I instinctively did are things that they teach in their program. And one of those was establishing that routine.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating how that just kicked in for you. All right, so day 27, you get released, and you're in the north at this part, right? And then you get transferred, and you get put on a plane.
So I was actually put on a plane on day 2.
Okay,
and
day
then,
2.
So this first 27 days was in Damascus.
Okay, but then you get transferred to another prison.
Yep. So I was transferred to a place on the outskirts of the city called Adra, which is the country's central federal prison. I spent the next month there. And here I was put in a cell with about 40 other men. We cooked and shared food together. Interestingly, these other inmates became friends. We had food together. They taught me Arabic. I taught them English. There was a prison basketball court, and I taught several of them how to play knockout. One of them smuggled a note out that navigated this game of geopolitical telephone and made it to my father in St. Louis, which if you heard the audio, heard the book on Audible, so you probably might remember that. But I think for me, these men, what I learned very quickly is that virtually none of them were true criminals. They were just victims of a corrupt system and had been caught up in the instability of the conflict. And frankly, these men reinforced some of the most significant things that I had learned through my travels. For example, never judge people by the actions of their government. I've learned that people who have the least often give the most. Something I found to be true in all corners of the world. I learned that every person's why is the same. We all eat, sleep, breathe, want to be happy, or chasing some kind of goal. It's only the how that changes. So these men really reinforce some of these key principles that I had learned in different places around the world.
That's incredible. And again, in the book, you reference these relationships, right? Because now you're not in solitary confinement. You're really amongst community, and you were learning about other Americans or Canadians or people working within the system. You'd reference this note that was smuggled out that somehow got to your dad. And I think there was even a note that was sent from an Instagram to your sister. Mm-hmm. And so using all these back channels and ways to kind of keep your head above water and do things was just, keeping yourself sane on that level is so much, but now you're just amongst community who seem like they also cared for you and cared for, one another.
Yep, absolutely. I remember about 2 weeks into that second month, I said to one of the inmates who had become a friend of mine, I said, "Hey, everybody here is talking about the inmates. Everybody here is being so nice to me. It was kind of hard to know what to expect in a place like this." And I'll never forget his response. He said, "Sam, in Syria, all the good people are here in prison because all the bad people are outside putting us in here." And that was a very sobering comment to hear.
Wow. Let's just unpack that one for a moment. All the good people are here in prison because the bad people are the ones putting us in.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
That Instagram message to your sister really, I don't want to say, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that. So I want to share this story, or have you share this, is one of the inmates one of the inmates who you befriended was on the phone with family member, cousin, someone who then was able to use their Instagram to message your sister, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That was remarkable.
Yeah, at Audra, there was a community phone that would get passed around, and sometimes we had access to it. And but there were really two stipulations with the phone. You had to speak in Arabic, and you could only call within the country. So it was useless to me. And but I again, through these relationships, asked one of the men who I had become friends with if he could basically facilitate the communication that you said. Can you call someone and tell them to message someone on social media if I give you the right handle? And so he did do that, and it did work. And my sister tells the story of receiving this message and kind of essentially it being like surreal that communication had come through. But I think there's a lot of lessons in here around humanity and the kindness of strangers.
Mm. I think I'm more just in awe of, like, this could have gone any number of ways for you. I mean, you referenced earlier, you weren't physically tortured. You weren't really harmed, more psychologically on a lot of levels. This could have gone a lot of directions for you. And I'm sure when you're traveling and your plan now is this competitive traveler to go to 193 countries, you didn't really think the thing that you were going to be, stand up the rest of your career was talking about what happened to you in Syria. And now that you're here and this is your place, I know that, what I've read and know about you is that you talk a lot about traveler safety, and you talk a lot about just ways to kind of open your eyes a little more. Do you think, did this change not only you as a traveler to tell other people? Do you tell people you shouldn't go, or is it now just definitely go, but have, what is the perspective that comes through that?
Yep. So I absolutely still encourage people to travel as much as they can. Again, it was the best education I've ever had. At the same time, I communicate this, and it was the case for me, is that safety was always the top priority. I don't think it's cool to be in unsafe situations. I don't go looking for trouble. At the same time, one of the most compelling and interesting things for me that I learned through my experiences, and I'm sure you've experienced similar things, is that the places that are negatively perceived, or that Western media tells us we're not supposed to like, these were truly the same places where I had many of my best experiences and where my perspectives were most meaningfully impacted. And despite everything that was happening in Syria, I was confident that the same was going to be the case. And in the majority of my experiences, the overwhelming majority, it was the case. And so I certainly encourage people to travel. At the same time, safety is always the top priority.
I want to go back to Audra, and I want to go back to this connection with people, because
Yep.
I mean, there's a different type of bond that's there. It's not just the travel bond. Now it's just, your life bond. It's so much more that you have this in connection with. And again, I'm not going to reference how you actually got out, for the simple fact that I want people to check out the book, but I'm going to keep saying your family is just extraordinary. And the levels that they went to save Sam and to figure things out and not just wait for answers, to be in action. I hope it's getting people enough to buy this book, because it blew me the fuck away. It blew me away from the standpoint of that love and that determination that they had for you, and just the hope, faith, and belief in that. I just really had to say that, because I've listened to this audiobook probably 3 times.
I thank you. It means I have an incredible family. I'll keep them. I'll keep them. But just one thing that I'll say on that is that when I was released, one of the most overwhelming things for me, and continues to be overwhelming, was learning about all of the things that happened on the outside while I was trapped on the inside, none of which I knew about. And frankly, it's now coming up on 5.5 years later, and I'm still saying thank you to people. I'm still learning about someone who made a phone call or talked to a friend or said a prayer, whatever it might have been. And still years later, I'm learning about about all of those people. And it's frankly overwhelming.
Because also a lot of those people in Syria, whoever were passing messages along, their safety was also in jeopardy.
I think that's right.
There's a lot of that they took, their own safety in turn just to help you, which obviously in the long run is helpful. But
That of a
that just
complete
says,
stranger.
yeah, who a lot of them didn't even know. It was a friend of a relative in prison that
Yep.
you were asked to pass the message along to.
I'll tell you one quick thing on that. Some of the best hospitality that I've experienced anywhere in the world, and you can speak to this, I'm sure, as well, of your own thoughts, but has been across the Middle East.
Mm.
And I'm so confident that if I wouldn't have had this, the point is the Syrian people are incredibly hospitable. And I remember when I was in that cell, oftentimes the guards would come in and just put a bowl of rice and a bowl of bread in the middle of the cell. And the inmates would look around and look at me and they say, Sam, you eat first. You are our guest. And of course I was uncomfortable, but so then I would grab a little bit, eat, and then they would come in and eat. And I think it's a real testament to the hospitality of the Middle East and of the people in Syria and in that region. And it puts a lot into perspective.
That is a crazy statement that you're in prison in Syria, but they're like, you're our guest. Please, we want to make sure you're taken care of. Just that love and compassion. You can see where they then wanted to help you from that level of getting messages to your family.
Right. Sorry. That's the connection. Is that, I was their guest. They were doing what they could to make me comfortable. Again, these were good people. And, it's kind of emotional to think about that.
I bet you talk about in the book and the stories of other, again, Americans or Canadians that were in prison that you learned of, and that you also then had the ability through the back channels that helped, with your release, get some people out, which is,
Actually, a couple days after I came home, my father received an email or a phone call from a Canadian woman who said that her son had been wrongfully detained and taken hostage by the regime as well. He'd been missing for 9 months. And so we actually kind of traced our paths back to the through the channel that had led to my release. And 2 weeks later, that Canadian man, his name was Christian Baxter, he was released as well. And so in some ways, the efforts of kind of, my family, but many others as well led to not only my release, but the release of others too.
I mean, that's one of those moments, and I know you're a big, and I believe it was one of the Ed or one of the inmates to you was telling, trust in God, and it's the faith in that. And I know it's a weird thing sort of look at as like you're there for that reason, but that you also helped Michael Baxter get out, and just that side of it is you can't make that up from the standpoint of what humanity has and that standpoint of why we do travel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just incredible how we're all connected. If you ask my mother, she will say that the entire reason I was detained wrongfully in Syria to begin with was to answer the prayers of Christian's mother in Canada. And so there are a range of ways that you could look at it, but just couldn't be more grateful. And I'll say, I don't really feel so much today, like survivor's guilt, as I feel more what I would characterize as survivor's responsibility, and feel like I was given so much, so fortunate. A case like this does not typically end the way that mine ended. And if anybody's been watching the kind of the liberation of these prisons in Syria over through the overthrow of the Syrian regime, these facilities are places that a lot of people don't typically come out of after they go in. And that's why I feel this responsibility to try and use this to have a positive impact, to communicate things that I learned, skills and traits that I learned that I think can potentially be helpful to others. So I'm trying, but that's where a lot of my effort is today.
I think responsibility is an interesting way to look at it, and I really commend you on that side of taking this gift that's happened, and not only the good that you've done for let's say someone like Michael Baxter, but now this responsibility. So tell us, like, what does that mean? I know you've referenced your speaking, And I know you speak all over the world and all over the country about your story, but how do you use these pillars? What are the main central themes that you share from your responsibility of what you've learned?
Yeah. So my primary pillar and theme that I speak on is uncertainty. And essentially, I was pushed. I'm kind of the guy I was talking to you about the being in solitary confinement. I was pushed to a point of overwhelming uncertainty, truly life or death. But through that, I learned some things that helped me, and some things that I think can help all of us when we're facing our own breeds of uncertainty in our own personal, professional, and spiritual lives. And my presentations are narrative driven and include the dramatic elements of these stories, but also weave in and conclude with key principles that I think we can all implement into our own lives. So that's the crux of what I speak about.
Mm. It's one of those things, the only thing that's inevitable is change, right? But the embracing that uncertainty and what it is.
Absolutely.
Beautifully said that. Are you ever in contact with any of the other inmates that you were there with?
I'm actually in touch with quite a few of them. Over the past few years, they've also been released, and we had exchanged contact information. And it's a little bit cliche to say, but they're truly some of the most remarkable people I've ever met. Some of them are still in Syria, and obviously things are changing more dramatically now. But some of them are in Lebanon, or have fled to Turkey, or into Europe. And I try to do what I can to help them today, especially after they helped me at
Mm.
such a tough time with food and smuggling out communication. And it's heartbreaking what they've experienced over the past, now 14 years. And I think one of the challenges that I have with my story and message is just the way that I portray the country of Syria, because the people there are fantastic. And so I'm optimistic about what the future looks like, and I think it's going to be brighter than it has been.
Well said. Have you been back to the Middle East at all? Travels?
I've been back I've been to like Qatar and the UAE. Been back a little bit to the region just for a couple trips.
Yeah. Fascinating. And three of the kind of the central themes that I know you referenced quite a bit in the book and the story is that gratitude, curiosity, and faith. And I think if we as travelers, as people, as humans, right, as I like to say, we travel to find that connection, that bond. A lot of the stuff you even talked about through hockey and everything else is if we can have those three things in our life, then we do get a chance to embrace that uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a gratitude standpoint, I think the challenge or the problem that a lot of people have with gratitude is they lack perspective. And I'm trying to get people to practice reframing their perspective, especially when facing challenges and uncertainty. Curiosity, I think it's the most consistent source of innovation and worldly contributions. And a lack of it is why I think so much upside is often left on the table. So I often challenge people to, as they move forward, and instead of saying no, say maybe, and see where that takes you. Because I think the world belongs to the curious.
Mm.
And from a faith standpoint, what I learned particularly in that cell is that we're never less alone than when we're totally alone with God. And I was in a situation where everything had been taken from me, my material possessions, my communication, my freedom. But no matter what, I knew that my faith was absolute, and I would have been in a completely different situation without that.
That's a remarkable way to look at it. I mean, just again, it's a much different story. You're sitting in St. Louis telling this story now, but I'm sure the reflecting and I will say, I really appreciate how communicative you've been, even with me. I'm sure you get hit up by everyone, but I've built this kind of correspondence with you over the last several years, and I mentioned to you as we first started, like you and I actually, I think, messaged on Instagram almost a couple weeks after you got back. I couldn't believe you got back to me, and I just want to say that, like, I don't want to say the word I'm a fan because I am a fan of people, things, but like it is just so inspiring from the standpoint of hearing your story, listening to the book, but also one of the things I really appreciated when you first started communicating was, hey, give me a moment, want to process, want to see what's going on in my life and where my world, where my direction is, as opposed to just tell a story.
Yeah, and again, I thanks for hanging in there with me. I just when some of these things happened, when a lot of this happened, it was I just had a lot to chew on. I was trying to make sense of it. I didn't know what it all meant, and still working to figure a lot of that out. But I can tell you, if we would have done that interview, 4 years ago when we first connected, it would have been very different
Definitely.
than it is today. And so I thank you for still being open to having me a couple years later and giving me some time to process it. But I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that time. And again, just major gratitude and kudos to your family. And I say this again, and I'm not overselling this book, is that it moved me. It moved me from the standpoint of the traveler's story of what you did, what you embraced, what you overcame, but also just what you then, I mean, you just must have been dumbfounded when you learned everything from what your family did and the story and the back channels that went into your release.
Absolutely, and still learning about things today. Still learning about these things that happen. And so um, just really really grateful. It puts a lot into perspective.
So what does travel mean to you?
Um, as I think I mentioned, I mean, for me, travel is the best education I've ever had. It's always been about learning and meeting people and a deeper understanding of the world. Travel teaches us how to let expectations take a backseat and replace stereotypes with real experiences. It teaches us how to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And I recommend to, to anyone who's interested to do as much of it as they can.
Yeah. I'm sure there are moments where you're in the flow of life, whether you're at a speaking engagement or you're in Queenstown having a Ferg burger or something crazy, right? You're just living life, and then there's probably a moment where you have that reference of what you overcame, of what these instances were, and that initial kind of wave of gratitude comes over. Is that kind of like things that happen from time to time?
It does happen from time to time, and I'm grateful to be able to lean on that perspective in a range of situations, and even just small challenges. I can get frustrated with something, in traffic or whatever it may be. It really actually helps to just take a step back, put things into perspective, and remind yourself of the bigger picture. And so I feel fortunate to be able to lean on that perspective. And I would, challenge all of us to look at our previous challenges and things that we've overcome as strength moving forward, as opportunities to grow.
Right. I mean, it's like complaining, oh, the Wi-Fi's down. Let me tell you about complaining. I mean, you spend 62 days, 63 days in a Syrian prison. I think it's a little different than not having Wi-Fi.
And I think it
Relative.
is a little bit different, but we again, we all have our own, we have our own challenges that we can learn from. And so I hope that we can reflect on those in that way.
So what's next for you? And I know you do your speaking, but is there like a big kind of, and I come up with this as you're a competitive athlete and you're a very goal, oriented person. Is there somewhere you're looking to get to? Not actually a physical place, but what's next?
Yeah, right now I'm as I mentioned, focused on the speaking business. I just put out the book a couple months ago, so focused on that and trying to use my experiences to help others. And I'm not sure what that will entirely look like, but really excited for whatever does come ahead. And I'll mention there's you guys are out in LA, and there's even been a little bit of interest in potentially adapting this for something on screen. And I don't know, I'm a normal guy from the Midwest, so I don't know how the entertainment industry works or anything like that. But maybe something in that space could be an additional way to share the story and message and have a positive impact. So we'll see. And if I'm out there, would love to catch
Dude,
up.
would love that. You got to answer this question because I'm sure you and the family have sort of kicked this one around. Who would play you? Who would you want to play you?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not 100% sure. I sometimes say Shia LaBeouf, only because great actor, but he recently became Catholic. We're about the same age. I just kind of
See that?
think
I see that.
maybe that could be a good fit.
You're an amazing dude. Super extraordinary. I've just marveled at your story, but your resilience and just the side of I'm not holding anything against what happened. On the other side is I want to show nothing but love and gratitude for the Syrian people and have nothing but respect for the people I meant and going forward.
Thanks. I'm trying. I've been surrounded by a lot of good people. Had a lot of opportunities that have come from it, like this, and just tried to, as I said, surround myself with the right people, and had a lot of help. Certainly haven't done it by myself, so I'm just gonna keep plugging away.
All right, before we wrap up, Sam, we're going to do a speed round of questions because
Oh boy!
that's what we do.
All right.
All right, so now we get to the heavy stuff. We're going to put 60 seconds on the clock, starting now. What is your current country count?
193.
Place you still want to visit?
I'd like to go back to Taiwan.
Place you tell people to visit?
Turkey.
Guidebook or phone app?
Phone app.
Window or aisle?
If the flight is longer than 2.5 hours, aisle. If it's shorter than 2.5 hours, window.
Airbnb or hotel?
If the trip is 7 days or longer, Airbnb. If it's shorter than that, hotel.
Boat or train?
Gosh, both.
Kindle, hard copy?
Hard copy.
Sunrise, sunset?
Sunset.
Do you collect anything from your travels?
Only pictures.
The thing you need on a flight?
Water.
Best travel lesson?
Don't judge people by the actions of their government.
Favorite national park?
Yellowstone.
Favorite airline?
Qatar.
Favorite food?
A Chipotle burrito.
Favorite hotel?
I'm a Marriott guy.
Favorite place in the world?
Home, the United States, but to travel to would be New Zealand.
Sam Goodwin. What an absolute pleasure, dude. I mean, I really commend you for just the inspiration, everything, and just your resilience. It's such an honor to know you. Tell the people where they can find the book, where they can hear more about you or book you as a speaker.
Thanks. Yeah. So Sam Goodwin, I'm on all the normal social media platforms. My website's samrgoodwin.com. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear from anyone listening. Would love that opportunity. The book's called Saving Sam. It's available everywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. And just, yeah, anyone listening, please feel free to reach out anytime. Would love to connect. And it was great to be here today.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. I appreciate your story. And as you know, with Travel with Meaning and finding that meaning wherever and whenever you travel. All right, people, we'll see you on the open road. Peace.